The kind of night that turns the whole frontier into a living beast, for the wind rises from the desert floor like a wild spirit hurling sand and broken sage across the open plains and carrying a roar that sounds almost human in its loneliness. Eleanor Hayes rides hard through the gathering storm, her small lantern swinging against the saddle horn, throwing weak yellow light across the trail. Her horse shies with every blast, for the storm has come down from the mountains with the speed of a charging buffalo, and Eleanor knows she has no choice but to find shelter before both of them are claimed by the cold, tumbling wind. She pulls the reins, and the mare answers with a frightened snort. Then they turn toward the darkening ridge, where the jagged cliffs rise like black teeth against the sky. Eleanor prays for any kind of protection, for the storm feels personal, as if the night itself has decided she has run far enough from her fears and must finally face them. She urges the mare toward a narrow cut between the cliffs, where she hopes the stone walls will block the worst of the wind. As she enters the passage, the storm shrieks above her head, but the tighter the canyon becomes, the quieter the world feels, until the wind settles into a distant growl. The mare relaxes slightly, stepping more steadily, and Eleanor exhales a shaky breath, grateful for even a moment of peace. What she does not realize is that she has crossed a boundary invisible to her but sacred. To those who know this land, it is Apache territory, and these cliffs are not empty. After another bend in the canyon, Eleanor sees the outline of a shallow cave tucked into the stone wall. Its entrance is shadowed yet sheltered, and she sees no other option, for the storm is too fierce to risk moving on. She guides the mare inside, ties the reins to a jut of rock, and runs her trembling hands along the horse's neck, whispering that everything will be all right, though she does not yet believe it herself. She turns toward the cave, intending to build a small fire and pray. The storm passes quickly, but the moment she steps deeper into the shadows, she senses that she is not alone. Her breath halts in her chest, and her fingers tighten around the lantern handle. Slowly, a tall figure steps into the faint light, the fire glow of the lantern brushing across strong shoulders, bare arms, and obsidian dark eyes that watch her without fear. He moves with a quiet steadiness like a mountain cat, certain of every step. This is no outlaw, no drifter. He is Apache, and not just any warrior, but a man whose presence fills the whole cave with silent power. Eleanor stumbles back, pressing her spine against the cold stone wall, and struggles to find her voice for a moment. Neither of them speaks, as though the storm outside has stolen all sound. Warrior finally breaks the silence with a calm, deep tone that holds neither threat nor hesitation. He tells her that she should not be here, that this place belongs to his people, and he asks how a frontier preacher's daughter has wandered so far from the lanterns of her town. Eleanor cannot answer at first, for she recognizes him, though she has only seen him once in passing on a quiet afternoon. Near the trading post, she remembers how he watched the world with a stillness that made others uneasy, and how his gaze had met hers with a strange certainty, as if he knew her even though they had never spoken. Now in the cave with the storm raging beyond, the warrior steps closer, and she feels the intensity of his presence like the heat of a fire. His name is Dakota, and as he studies her trembling form, her wind-tangled hair, and the stubborn lift of her chin, he decides that fate has brought her to him for a reason, one neither of them understands yet, but neither can turn away from. The night has trapped them together, and the storm will not let either one leave until the truth buried between them awakens for the first time. Eleanor, standing against the cave wall, her heart still racing from the shock of finding herself inside Apache territory with a warrior who watches her as though he can see every secret she has ever tried to hide. The storm outside deepens into a wild scream, shaking the stone walls and sending dust drifting from the cracks above. The mare, still tied at the cave entrance, stamps nervously, but Dakota lifts a hand, and the animal calms as if understanding his steady presence. Eleanor notices this, and her fear shifts into something more complicated, for she senses no cruelty in him, only a strength that does not need loud words or threats to be felt. Dakota studies her soaked dress, her trembling arms, the determination in her eyes that fights to stay upright even when fear curls through her limbs. He asks again why she has wandered this far in weather that could break a strong man, let alone a sheltered frontier daughter. Eleanor tries to speak, but the words shake loose from her like brittle leaves, for she is torn between admitting her desperation and protecting the pride she has always carried like a shield. She finally manages to say that the storm trapped her away from town, and she did not choose to trespass on Apache land. She expects anger or accusation, yet Dakota only nods slowly as if he had suspected this from the moment he saw her. He tells her that he has no intention of harming her and that she should not fear him, unless she gives him reason to, and somehow the calm truth in his voice is more frightening than any threat, for she can feel it reaching through her defenses. The fire crackles weakly beside them, offering a glow that touches both their faces, and Eleanor feels strangely bare beneath his gaze. She has met many men in her life, ranch hands, drifters, soldiers, and men of God, but none have looked at her the way Dakota does. He sees her not as a fragile creature nor as an enemy, but as something alive and strong, even if she does not yet realize it herself. The storm outside hammers harder, and Dakota glances toward the entrance, then back at her. He tells her that leaving now would mean certain death, for the wind is filled with biting sand and darkness where wolves and outlaws travel more freely than riders. From town she must stay through the night for survival, not choice, and though she knows he speaks truth, her breath still catches at the idea of spending a full night alone with a man who unsettles her so deeply. Dakota moves to the far side of the cave, gathering dry brush he had stored earlier, and feeds it into the small fire. The flames rise a little brighter, casting long shifting shadows across the stone walls. Eleanor steps closer to the warmth, unsure of where to stand or how to ease the rush of thoughts tumbling through her mind. Dakota senses her hesitation, and without turning, he tells her that he does not claim her as captive, nor will he take advantage of her presence. The words should comfort her, yet they stir something unfamiliar in her chest, for she has always been treated as delicate, breakable, untouchable, and now a man of fierce strength offers her respect without fear or judgment. She wraps her arms around herself and finds her voice at last asking why he does not demand she leave or surrender or kneel, as she has heard many tales of warriors doing. Dakota turns quietly and meets her gaze with a stillness that feels ancient. He tells her that stories told in town are shaped by fear, and that real strength needs no cruelty. He steps closer only enough that she can feel the heat from his skin mingling with the firelight. And he says that she is a guest, not a prisoner, and that guests are protected even when they arrive uninvited. Eleanor feels the cave closing in around her, yet not with danger, but with the weight of a truth she never expected to face. She is alone with a man her world has warned her against, yet she feels safer now than she ever felt in the parlor of her father's house. With watchful eyes judging every move, the storm outside rages, but inside the cave a strange, uneasy calm settles between them, a fragile space where fear and curiosity mix like smoke with fire, and where neither of them can yet guess how the night will reshape their livest fire, burning a little brighter, and the storm outside turning the canyon into a long throat of wind and thunder. The sound rises and falls like distant drums, and Eleanor feels every tremor echo through her bones. She stands close to the warmth, feeling her dress cling damply to her skin, while Dakota moves with quiet purpose, arranging more brush and a heavy pelt near the fire. His movements are steady, never hurried, never unsure, and she cannot understand how a man raised in such harsh wild country can project such an air of peace while she trembles over every breath. Lantern rests on a rock shelf, glowing weakly beside them, but the firelight does most of the work, casting a deep golden warmth across Dakota's face. The shadows on his skin make him look carved from the stone itself, and Eleanor finds herself studying him in ways she knows she should not. She notices the way his shoulders rise slow and powerful, the way he stands as if measuring every inch of the world around him, and the way his eyes hold a calm that no preacher, no lawman, no suitor in her town has ever carried. She feels exposed beneath that gaze, yet she cannot look away. Dakota finally speaks his voice, even in quiet, as if he knows the storm has ears. He tells her that fear is not weakness and that men and women alike have a right to tremble. When the unknown surrounds them, Eleanor tries to deny that she is frightened, but Dakota tilts his head slightly and looks at her in a way that makes denial impossible. He tells her that he sees more truth in silence than in any speech she might force, and that she does not need to pretend strength in front of him, for the land itself respects honesty above pride. Eleanor feels heat rise to her cheeks and an ache swell in her chest, for she has spent her whole life being told to remain composed, gentle, quiet, perfectly controlled. Her father expects obedience from dawn to dusk. Her suitors expect modesty and gratitude. The town expects discipline and purity. She has been molded into something fragile, something breakable, yet Dakota sees something else in her, something that startles her so deeply she nearly steps back from it. Dakota crouches by the fire, adding a dry stick that crackles as it catches flame. He tells her that the canyon is a place where truth reveals itself, for the wind strips away lies, the night strips away pretenses, and the fire shows the heart for what it is. Eleanor gazes into the flames, feeling the pull of his words echo through her mind. The warmth strokes her skin, and she loosens her grip on her arms, letting her hands fall to her sides as she absorbs everything he has said. She asks him in a soft voice how he can claim to know her when they have barely spoken. He lifts his gaze to hers and tells her that he sees how she stands, how her eyes shift when she hides confusion, how her breath changes when she feels drawn towards something yet fears it. He says that a life spent in close company with the land teaches a man to read signs, not just of weather and danger, but of the hearts that pass through his world. Eleanor feels the truth in his words like a hand brushing her ribs, and she turns her face slightly so he will not see the full depth of her reaction. But Dakota notices. He always notices. His steps are light as he rises and moves nearer, but he still keeps a respectful distance between them. He tells her that she is strong but afraid of her own strength, and that she carries a spirit that does not belong to the strict walls of a frontier town. The fire crackles again, sending a ribbon of sparks into the air, and the glow touches her face in a way that makes Dakota hold his breath for a brief moment, though she does not see it. The storm rages louder, the canyon trembling under its force, yet inside the cave another kind of storm begins to form, something softer than fear, yet sharper than curiosity, something she has never felt with any man. Eleanor senses it too, and her heart pounds as she struggles to understand what rises between them. The night deepens, the fire glows brighter, and though neither of them moves any closer, the space between them becomes charged, alive, heavy with unspoken truth and the first quiet pull of desire. Neither of them can yet name Eleanor, standing stiff against the cave wall, her chest still hammering from the sudden realization that she is trapped in Apache territory with a warrior who watches her with eyes as sharp as the canyon rocks. The storm outside screams through the Yala mountains and shakes the cave walls, sending tiny pebbles rattling to the floor. The mare at the entrance stamps nervously, but Dakota lifts a hand and the animal stills, as if sensing the unspoken power of the man before it. Eleanor swallows hard and realizes that his calm command is more frightening than any threat could be. Studies her silently, the firelight dancing across his features, showing the strength in his shoulders, the steadiness of his arms, and the depth in his gaze. He does not move too close, yet every inch of the cave seems to shrink under the weight of his presence. Eleanor feels the heat of the fire and the tension of being observed in a way that no man from town ever dared. She wants to look away, yet she cannot draw her eyes from him. Dakota finally speaks, his voice low and even, carrying a quiet authority that demands listening. He asks why she wandered so far and whether meant to kill or maim even the most seasoned traveler. Eleanor stammers, for her words feel weak and inadequate in front of him. She tells him about the storm, how it forced her into the canyon, how she never intended to trespass. She expects anger or punishment. Yet Dakota simply nods as if he already suspected the truth. He tells her that he has no intention of harming her and that fear is only natural when one is so far from safety. Her heart twists with confusion, for there is no cruelty in him, only a quiet certainty that unsettles her more than any weapon could. The fire crackles and casts moving shadows on the cave walls, flickering across. Dakota's dark-skinned Eleanor notices the detail she never expected to see: the sharp line of his jaw, the small scars on his hands, the way his eyes never leave hers even when he bends to feed the fire. She feels exposed, but in a new way, exposed to honesty, to a presence that is strong, but not dangerous. She has always been told to be cautious around men, taught to fear what she does not understand, but this man is different. Dakota crouches by the fire, arranging wood with careful movements. He tells her that in the canyon one must be true to oneself, for the land has no patience for lies or pretenses. He says that guests who arrive uninvited are protected if they respect the rules of the place. Eleanor feels a strange relief as he explains this, though it comes with a tension she cannot name. She realizes she does not know what she feels about him, yet the pull is undeniable. She gathers courage and asks why he does not force her to leave or threaten her. He meets her gaze and tells her that real strength does not require cruelty. He says that fear and respect are different things and that she will learn more by surviving the night than by fighting him. Eleanor swallows hard and nods, realizing that her usual ways of control mean nothing here in the canyon with a man who sees the world in ways she cannot begin to understand. The storm roars louder and the fire throws sparks up into the shadowed cave. Dakota moves closer but does not reach her. He respects the distance, yet Eleanor feels the shift in the air, as if the space itself between them hums with possibility. She wraps her arms around herself and stares into the flames, feeling the strange pull of the warrior's presence, the steady power, the calm authority, and the sharp intelligence, all wrapped together in a man who has stepped from legend into her frightened reality. Night stretches on with wind and firelight, and Eleanor realizes that she is learning to breathe in the presence of a man who unsettles her yet offers protection. She feels the weight of every look, every word, and the pull of something she does not yet understand stirring deep in her chest. She knows the night will not be easily forgotten, and that the canyon has changed her before dawn has even come, burning brighter now, and the storm outside turning the canyon into a wall of wind and roaring sand. Eleanor stands near the warmth of the flames, her dress damp and sticking to her skin, while Dakota moves with steady precision, arranging stones and dry brush to keep the fire alive. The cave feels alive too, with the sound of the wind echoing off the stone and the flutter of dust motes catching the firelight, making the air shimmer. She cannot understand how one man can remain so calm when the storm rages with such fury outside. Yet he moves with quiet confidence, like the canyon itself breathes through him. Eleanor watches him closely, the way his hands work with purpose, the careful angle of his shoulders and the tilt of his head as he senses the space around them. She feels herself drawn to every movement, every shadow, every flicker of the firelight across his face. Her heart pounds in a way that feels new and frightening, for she has never been this close to a man who does not demand her submission, but whose presence commands attention anyway. She wraps her arms around herself, yet she cannot look away. Dakota finally speaks, his voice low, steady, carrying a calm that seems to push back the storm. He tells her that the night teaches lessons that daylight cannot, and that fear is only one way of understanding the world. Eleanor listens intently, for his words cut through the pounding in her ears and the chaos outside. They speak of nothing and everything at once: the land, the fire, the storm, and the quiet truth in their presence. The more he speaks, the more she feels unguarded, exposed in a way that is not shameful, but honest. She wants to test him to see if he is like the men she knows, the ones who use power and threat to get their way. Yet when she lifts her eyes, she sees only patience and strength. She notices the The subtle rise and fall of his chest, the slight furrow of his brow, the deep calm in his dark eyes, and she realizes that this man sees her in ways that no one else has ever looked. She wants to look away but cannot, for each glance brings a strange sense of safety mixed with a growing heat. She does not understand. Dakota crouches by the fire, adding a stick to the flames. He tells her that the canyon respects honesty and that trying to hide oneself only brings danger. Eleanor feels the truth of his words in her chest like a pulse. She realizes that the fire is not the only heat in the cave, that something else rises between them, something fragile and wild and full of tension. She cannot name it yet, but she feels it threading through the space between them, drawing her attention and her heart. She gathers courage and asks him how he can know her when they have barely spoken. He looks at her with a kind of steady gaze that reads more than her words and tells her that he knows the truth in how she stands, how she breathes, and how she moves in fear and desire. He says that the land teaches a man to see what others miss, to read the signs of character and spirit. Eleanor feels her pulse spike at his words, for he sees parts of her she has spent years hiding from the world. The fire crackles, sending sparks into the air, and the glow touches her skin like a brush. Eleanor feels exposed yet safe, and the strange tension between fear, fascination, and desire coils tighter. She senses the canyon closing in, not with threat, but with intensity that fills the small space and presses against the edges of her heart. The wind howls outside, yet inside the cave a different storm gathers, one of quiet pull and urgent truth. Eleanor realizes she has never felt so alive, so aware of a single presence in her life. The firelight plays across Dakota's face, and she notices every detail, every shadow, every subtle shift in his posture. The night stretches long and the storm continues, but inside the cave another force grows. One neither of them can yet name, a force that will shape the rest of their lives, and the bond forming between them with every flicker of the fire and every whispered word carried on the wind. Cave quieting just slightly as the storm outside eases into a low roar. Eleanor feels the fire on her skin and the heat of Dakota nearby, but the space between them is filled with tension neither can ignore. She has spent her life measuring herself against rules and expectations, the rigid manners of frontier society and the careful judgment of those around her. Yet here with him she realizes that none of it matters. The canyon holds no rules for how hearts should beat, and the fire casts shadows that make the walls feel alive, like the land itself watches every move. Dakota shifts slightly closer, his presence drawing a subtle line between comfort and challenge. Eleanor feels it in her chest like a pull she cannot resist. She tries to steady her breathing and reminds herself that she is a guest in his land, not a player in some game, yet every word he speaks, every glance he offers carries weight. She notices the way his eyes follow her without blinking, the way his stance is patient but ready to act. The cave feels smaller with every second, as if the space itself leans toward them, encouraging and understanding neither has yet named. She tests him with a sharp question, asking why he does not force her to obey or demand her respect in the way she has been taught to yield to men. He tilts his head slightly, studying her reaction, and says that power gained through fear is weaker than strength shown in restraint. He tells her that he can see the pride and courage she hides beneath the surface, that she has been taught to smother her desires, yet the canyon has no patience for lies. Dakota speaks with a calm certainty that unnerves her, yet draws her closer in mind, if not in body. Eleanor finds herself staring at the fire, wishing it could hold some of the courage she lacks. Her fingers twitch and she fidgets with the hem of her dress that is still damp from the storm. She wants to run her eyes along every line of his strong shoulders, but she forces herself to look elsewhere. The pull she feels is unfamiliar and terrifying, yet the warmth of his presence comforts her. She senses that his respect is genuine and that he has no intention of taking advantage of her fear or inexperience. Taka crouches by the fire again, adding dry brush. He looks at her without saying anything, yet his gaze feels like a conversation in itself. He tells her that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Eleanor absorbs this and realizes that every moment she has spent trying to appear brave in town has been for show. She has never faced a man like him, a man who does not demand a performance, a man whose strength makes her aware of her own strength and limits. At the same time, the fire casts shifting shadows across the cave walls, highlighting the rugged textures of stone and the smooth lines of her dress. Eleanor feels exposed yet safe, her heart racing and her body responding to the intensity of the moment. She senses the canyon around them pressing in yet protecting her, and the strange pull between them grows heavier. She does not yet understand it, but she knows that her life has changed in the instant she stepped into the cave. The night stretches on, and the wind outside begins to die down. The fire crackles, sending sparks upward, and Eleanor realizes that she has never felt so acutely aware of another human being. Takoda's presence fills the cave with silent command, and yet there is softness there too. He speaks of nothing yet of everything, hinting at the depth of his understanding of the land of life and of the hearts that cross his path. Eleanor listens and realizes that she cannot retreat from the pull that rises between them. She is learning that night will teach lessons of courage, desire, and honesty that daylight could never reveal, and that the canyon will not let her go without showing the truth of herself and the man who watches her with steady dark eyes. Eleanor trying to steady her racing heart, the firelight flickering across her damp dress, and the uneven stone floor of the cave casting long shadows that twist like spirits around them. She feels every muscle in her body tense and relax in turn, as if her own limbs cannot decide what is safe and what is dangerous. The storm has eased outside, yet the echoes of thunder linger like a reminder of the wildness beyond the canyon walls. Takoda stands near the fire, arranging more dry brush and watching her with eyes that seem to read every thought before she has formed it. She shifts, nervously, feeling exposed in a way she has never been exposed before. The canyon is silent now, except for the occasional crackle of the fire and the distant rumble of rocks settling. She knows that the night has trapped her here with him, and that she must remain through the darkness whether she wishes to or not. Her body reacts to his presence in ways she does not understand. She feels heat rising in her cheeks, a tightness in her chest, and a pull toward him that frightens and fascinates her all at once. Takoda moves closer to the fire, yet still maintains a careful distance. Eleanor notices the strength in his stance, the effortless control in his movements, and the way he measures each step as if the land itself speaks to him through his feet. He speaks softly about the canyon and the way it teaches patience, respect, and truth. He tells her that the fire reveals more than words ever could, and that sometimes the silence between people says more than speech. Eleanor listens intently, absorbing every word, though she feels more drawn to the man than to his lessons. Moment shifts when a small spark flies from the fire, catching the edge of her skirt. She reacts quickly, trying to pull it away before it burns, but the dress loosens in her frantic movements and falls at her feet. She freezes, terrified, embarrassed, and utterly vulnerable. Takoda steps forward, instantly smothering the ember with a piece of cloth, and his hands barely brush hers. He does not speak immediately, but the intensity in his gaze makes her heart pound. He says softly, in a voice that carries authority and warmth at once, "You say you want freedom, but when you finally taste it, you cannot stand the truth of it." Eleanor feels the weight of his words, and the truth behind them presses against her like the canyon walls themselves. She realizes that she has never allowed herself to be truly seen or understood, and that in this moment, the warrior sees everything: the fear, the desire, the strength, and the fragility. She wraps the blanket around herself, clutching it tightly, yet the firelight and his gaze leave her feeling bare in a way that is both terrifying and exhilarating. Takoda does not advance further, respecting the invisible line she sets with her arms and the trembling of her body, yet the energy in the cave shifts. He says that respect and strength are more powerful than fear, and that no one should be forced into obedience. Eleanor realizes that he does not see her as a prize or a challenge, but as a human being whose choices and boundaries matter. She feels a strange relief mingled with the intensity of the moment. The canyon has pressed them together, and the fire has burned away the masks she carries. The night stretches on with the fire crackling and the storm fading to distant rumbles outside. Eleanor and Dakota sit across from each other in silence, yet the space between them hums with tension and understanding. She feels the pull of his presence, the quiet authority of his gaze, and the first stirring of something deeper, something she cannot name, yet knows will shape every choice she makes from this night onward. The canyon holds them captive, yet also protects them, teaching lessons that only darkness, wind, and fire could ever reveal. Eleanor, clutching the blanket around her shoulders, feeling the heat of the fire against her skin and the quiet strength of Dakota across from her. The cave has settled into a rhythm with the storm outside, fading into low rumbles and the wind moving softly through the canyon rocks. She feels a tension in the space between them, a silent pull that makes her pulse race and her stomach twist. The night has stretched long enough for fear to mingle with curiosity, and she cannot deny the fascination that grows with every glance he casts her way. Dakota watches her with a steady gaze that seems to pierce every layer of her carefully built defenses. He speaks softly about the canyon, the wind, and the life that flows through the land. He tells her that patience is as powerful as strength, and that knowing when to wait can teach more than acting recklessly. Eleanor feels the truth in his words, and the calm authority he projects draws her closer. In mind, if not in body, she feels herself softening, letting down walls she never imagined letting anyone see. She tests herself by looking directly at him, searching for any hint of cruelty or mockery, yet finds none, only respect and something else, something subtle that makes her pulse quicken. He tells her that she is stronger than she believes, that the land does not lie about power or courage, and that she has more than enough to face the world even if she has never had to prove it to anyone. Eleanor swallows hard, feeling both pride and uncertainty swell inside her. She realizes that he has not asked for obedience, only for honesty. Fire casts shifting shadows across the cave walls, and the warmth licks at her skin. Eleanor notices the small details she has never seen before: the tilt of his head, the muscles in his arms, the way his eyes do not wander away. She realizes that he is not just observing her, but reading her presence, understanding her fear, her hesitation, and the quiet sparks of desire she does not yet name. She wraps the blanket tighter around herself, but the tension between them grows heavier and more charged with every passing second. Suddenly a noise outside startles her, rocks sliding from the canyon walls, a whisper of movement in the dark. She leaps back instinctively, and he is there, immediately protective, his presence like a shield. He whispers for her to stay calm and moves toward the cave entrance, assessing the sound. Eleanor watches him feel the surge of safety and awe as he steps between her and the unknown. He is alert, powerful, and utterly controlled, and she realizes that she has never felt so defended yet so vulnerable at the same time. The moment passes, the threat dissipates, and Dakota returns to her side. He does not speak of the danger, only reassures with a calm glance and a small nod. The cave feels different now, warmer, more intimate, as if the night itself has recognized the shift in their connection. Eleanor feels a thrill at the awareness that he respects her boundaries, that he protects her without demanding anything in return. She realizes that she is learning something new about trust, courage, and desire all at once. The fire crackles, sending sparks upward, and she leans slightly closer to the warmth, feeling the pull of his presence like a magnetic current. She does not move forward physically, but her heart moves in ways she cannot control. She feels the weight of the night, the storm, the fire, and the warrior in a combination that leaves her breathless and aware of the power that rises when respect, desire, and truth meet. She knows that this night will shape her choices and her heart long after dawn arrives, and that Dakota has changed the way she sees strength, intimacy, and herself forever. The first faint light of dawn creeps into the cave. Eleanor has spent the night oscillating between fear, curiosity, and an unspoken attraction that twists her insides. She has never felt so exposed, and yet so safe at the same time. The fire has burned low, casting long shadows across the walls, and Dakota sits near it, his presence steady and commanding as always. She feels the weight of every glance and every small movement he makes and realizes that the canyon has become a world unto itself, a place where nothing else matters except survival, truth, and the growing tension between them. Suddenly, the sharp crack of distant gunfire echoes through the canyon, sending a jolt through her body. She freezes, her hands clutching the blanket around her, and the Mari shies at the sound. Dakota moves instantly, a shadow of power and focus. He gestures for her to stay low and draws his bow with a speed that seems almost impossible. Eleanor watches him, feel the pull of fear and admiration mingling in her chest. She has never seen anyone move with such precision and calm when life itself hangs on each heartbeat. She feels the truth of his skill and the fierceness of his protection as tangible. As the stones beneath her fingers, the outlaws are moving through the canyon, unaware of the presence of the warrior waiting for them. Dakota whispers for Eleanor to stay quiet and keep close. She presses herself against the wall, her heart hammering. Yet she is not paralyzed. She feels the steady rhythm of his breath and the subtle guidance of his eyes that communicate more than words could. The danger presses close, and she cannot deny the rising heat in her body that mingles with fear and awe. The canyon has become a crucible testing courage, trust, and desire. All at once, Dakota releases an arrow, and the sound cuts through the air. Eleanor flinches at the tension but feels the surge of relief as the threat is neutralized. He checks the canyon around them and assures her with a calm glance that the danger has passed for now. Eleanor swallows hard, feeling her knees weaken, not from exhaustion but from the intensity of the night and the intimacy of being protected so completely by a man whose power hums through the air. She realizes she has never felt so alive, so seen, and so connected to another human being. He turns back to her, offering a hand to help her stand. Eleanor takes it cautiously and feels the warmth of his palm against her own. The brush of contact sends a shiver up her spine, and she cannot help but notice the way his eyes study her every reaction. She wants to pull away, yet feels drawn closer by the unspoken understanding that passes between them. Firelight and the fading storm make the cave feel sacred, a private world where the rules of the frontier do not apply. Dakota speaks softly, telling her that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Eleanor nods, feeling the truth of his words settle into her bones. She feels a surge of confidence mingled with longing and realizes that she is beginning to understand the depth of the pull she feels toward him. The canyon walls hold the memory of their night together. The fire, the storm, the tension, and the first moments of trust and connection. As the dawn grows stronger, Eleanor feels the inevitability of returning to town looming, yet she also feels a new determination taking root. She knows that the canyon has changed her, that the warrior has altered her understanding of strength, intimacy, and desire forever. She realizes that she cannot forget the heat of his presence, the calm of his gaze, and the way he has protected her without claiming her. She knows that the next choice she makes will be shaped by the memory of the night, the fire, and the Apache warrior who has claimed a place in her heart. Without words, Eleanor riding slowly back toward her town, the first light of morning casting long shadows across the canyon floor. Her mind is a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. The night in the cave with Dakota haunts her like a dream she cannot fully grasp yet cannot forget. She feels the pull of his presence lingering in her chest. The memory of his calm authority and the way he read her like no one ever has. The canyon behind her seems distant now, yet the lessons of the storm, the fire, and the quiet connection with the warrior remain vivid in her mind. As she rides, she feels the weight of the town waiting for her, the judgment, the expectations, and the strict rules she has always obeyed. The people will ask questions about where she was, how she survived, and with whom. She knows she will face whispers and scorn, and yet a part of her resists returning to that world. She has tasted something wilder, something freer, and it calls to her with a strength she cannot deny. Her pulse quickens as she imagines Dakota watching from the canyon, the pull of his eyes and the power in his presence reaching across the miles. The familiar sights of town bring an uneasy sense of relief mixed with dread. She sees her father on the porch scanning the horizon for her return. Her heart twists at the thought of explaining anything. He will not understand the fire, the storm, or the quiet bond she has formed with a man who exists outside their narrow world. She feels suffocated by the predictability of her life and yet tethered to it by duty and fear, the memory of the cave. And Dakota's gaze weighs heavy on her like a secret she cannot speak aloud. She dismounts and walks the horse through the streets, feeling the eyes of neighbors and acquaintances on her damp dress and wind-tangled hair. The whispers rise and her pulse races. She senses judgment and curiosity mixed with admiration for surviving. The night alone, yet no one knows the truth of what happened. She cannot tell them how she felt safe yet alive, how fear and desire mingled in the firelight, how every glance from Dakota left her both trembling and aware of her own strength. The realization hits her that returning does not restore the life she had before. The world of rules and appearances seems hollow compared to the depth of experience she has felt in the canyon. She feels the pull to leave again, to return to the place that taught her courage and honesty, and to the man who protected her without claiming her. She wonders if she is brave enough to follow that pull, or if she will remain trapped in a life defined by others. As the sun rises higher, Eleanor feels a mix of determination and longing. She knows that the canyon and the warrior who inhabits it are part of her now. Her heart has shifted in a way that cannot be undone. The lessons of the night remain etched in her memory, and she realizes that she cannot ignore them. She must decide if she will step back into the safety and judgment of town, or if she will ride back to the canyon to claim a future shaped by her own choices. She pauses at the edge of town, taking a deep breath, feeling the wind against her face and the faint echo of the storm in her mind. The pull toward Dakota is almost unbearable, yet she must consider what comes next. The town waits with its expectations and her past, yet the canyon waits with freedom, truth, and a man who has seen her fully. She knows that the next step she takes will define not only her day but her life and her heart, and that the choice will demand courage, honesty, and the willingness to face a desire she cannot yet name fully. Eleanor walking through the streets of her town, her chest tight with tension and her thoughts spinning. She sees familiar faces, the merchants at their stalls, the children running barefoot along the dusty roads, and the women gossiping behind their hands, yet none of it feels real to her anymore. The night in the canyon with Dakota lingers like a vivid shadow she cannot shake. Her heart beats faster at every memory of the fire, the storm, and the intensity of his gaze. She realizes that the world she has returned to is the world she has always known, but it no longer contains her fully. Her father approaches with the heavy weight of expectation in his eyes. He asks questions about where she was, why she was absent, and what dangers she encountered. Eleanor feels a tight knot in her chest, for she knows she cannot tell him the truth. The truth would be unthinkable to him, impossible to comprehend, and yet she cannot lie completely. Either choice makes her tremble, and yet the pull of the canyon and the memory of Dakota remains strong. She senses a growing divide between her obligations and her heart, and it terrifies her and excites her all at once. Neighbors whisper as she passes their homes. She feels their eyes on her back, their judgments and assumptions wrapping around her like a cage, yet inside her chest burns a defiant spark. She realizes she has changed, that the fear she once carried of scandal or disapproval feels smaller than the desire and truth she experienced in the canyon. She wonders how many nights she can spend hiding from the life that calls her so strongly, and feels a pulse of longing for the warrior who has seen her completely. And without judgment, Eleanor walks to the edge of the town square, pausing to catch her breath. She feels the pull of the canyon like a current tugging at her soul. She thinks of Dakota standing by the fire, the quiet strength of his hands, the intensity of his eyes, and the way he held her fear and desire with equal care. The memory makes her cheeks warm and her heart pound. She knows that returning to her old life would mean burying a part of herself she can never ignore again. She overhears townspeople talking about marriage prospects and proper behavior and feels a pang of frustration. World is so small here, yet the canyon has shown her a world vast and wild and full of possibility. She realizes that the rules of propriety cannot contain the woman she has become. The pull toward the canyon and toward Dakota is stronger than any obligation to her past. She feels the need to act before the memory fades, before the weight of expectation crushes the spark of freedom she has discovered. Eleanor finally makes a decision. She mounts her horse, quietly feeling the familiar leather against her legs and the strength of the animal beneath her. She glances back at the town one last time, feeling both sorrow and relief. She rides out toward the rising sun, the canyon waiting in the distance, her heart tuned to the memory of fire and wind and a man who has changed her forever. The dust rises around her boots and the wind pulls at her hair, and she knows that she cannot turn back. The canyon draws closer with every step, and Eleanor feels the rhythm of her own courage matching the rhythm of the horse beneath her. She thinks of Dakota and the firelight and the lessons of trust and desire he has shown her. She feels a swelling certainty in her chest that she is finally choosing for herself. She rides with purpose and determination, knowing that the next meeting will define not just her day but her life and her heart, and that she is ready to embrace the freedom and passion the canyon promises without fear or hesitation. Eleanor riding into the canyon, the morning sun casting long golden beams across the rugged cliffs. She feels the dust under her boots and the wind tugging at her hair, and a thrill of freedom she has never known pulses through her veins. The memory of Dakota and the fire and the storm carries her forward. Like an invisible hand guiding her through the jagged rocks, the canyon is quiet except for the whisper of the wind and the occasional call of a distant bird, and she knows in her bones that the night she spent with him was only the beginning of what is to come. As she rounds a sharp bend, she sees him waiting near the fire where they first met. His silhouette is strong against the rising light, his eyes scanning the horizon until they settle on her. Her heart leaps and she feels the tension of longing and relief curl through her chest. She dismounts slowly, feeling the weight of the past days lift with every step toward him. She notices the way he shifts slightly as she approaches, the quiet power in his stance, the calm authority, and the way he seems to belong completely to this wild land. Dakota steps forward, his gaze never leaving hers, and Eleanor feels a pull she cannot resist. She reaches him and he offers a hand to steady her, and she takes it, feeling the warmth of his palm and the steady strength in his grip. The world around them fades, leaving only the canyon, the fire, and the space between them where everything unspoken and true hums with energy. She feels the lessons of courage and trust and desire coursing through her as the man who has claimed her respect without demanding it finally holds her presence fully in his eyes. He speaks softly, telling her that she has returned not because she must, but because she chooses to. She feels the power of his words in her chest, and the truth of them resonates. She realizes that she has never had to fight for anyone's acceptance before, that she has been molded by expectation and fear. And now she stands free in the canyon with a man who has seen her completely and without judgment. The fire crackles, sending sparks upward, and she feels the pull of destiny in every glowing ember. Eleanor steps closer, her hands brushing the fabric of his tunic, and she feels a shiver of anticipation and recognition. He smiles, faintly acknowledging the courage and honesty she brings to this moment, and she feels the weight of every unspoken emotion lifted from her shoulders. She knows that in his presence she is neither captive nor constrained, but fully herself, with all her strength and vulnerability interwoven. She breathes in the warm canyon air, feeling the last traces of doubt fall away. Dakota lifts her chin gently, and Eleanor feels the intensity of his gaze as he measures her heart, her spirit, and her resolve. He tells her that nothing outside the canyon matters here, that the land is witness to their choice, and that he will walk beside her in Whatever path she chooses, she feels her chest swell with pride and relief, knowing that she is no longer bound by the narrow rules of her old life, that freedom, courage, and love await her in the place that has always called her. Sun rises, fully casting a golden glow across the cliffs, and Eleanor feels the pull of the canyon and of Dakota merge into one undeniable force. She mounts the horse beside him, and together they ride deeper into the land that has shaped them, the wind tugging at their hair and the fire of the past night lingering in every glance and touch. She knows that the canyon will hold their secrets, their courage, and the bond between them forever, and that every choice henceforth will be guided by the trust, desire, and freedom they have found together. As they ride, Eleanor looks at Dakota and feels a certainty she has never known. She knows the lessons of the night, the fire, and the storm will carry forward, that the pull between them is stronger than fear, and that the canyon has claimed not just their bodies but their hearts. She leans slightly toward him, feeling the warmth of his presence, and knows without doubt that she has chosen not only freedom, but the man who has shown her how to stand fearless, alive, and fully herself in a world that will never contain her again.